Hello, I'm Selena Hill, digital editor at Black Enterprise, and welcome to the Cultural Currency and Social Influence session, which will enlighten you on how to turn your social media hustle into a business strategy for success. I'll start by introducing our amazing panelists. First up, we have Alex Wolf, who is an award-winning entrepreneur, technology philosopher, digital marketer, and brand consultant who writes and speaks about the ways the internet has changed our social and economic environments and affected consumer behavior. She is also the author of the book Resonate for anyone who wants to build an audience. We also have with us Travis Weeks, who is the founder and managing partner of Driven Society, a full-service marketing agency that leverages the power of influence and community to create marketing campaigns and experiential events for brands like HBO, Cadillac, and Moet Hennessy. I'm super happy to have you both here today to talk about how entrepreneurs and creatives can monetize social influence and leverage cultural clout to build their brands and their businesses. So Alex, I want to start with the basics. When it comes to building a digital brand or business, how should an entrepreneur determine which social media platform is right for them?
Yeah, well, it really depends on where your audience is, right? The one that's correct is the one where you're going to be able to find your target demographic. And I always think it's wise to start with one and perfect one before you try to perfect all of them, just because it's, 10 times more difficult to try to resonate with people on all the different platforms at the same time. So just think about where your audience is, and it's okay if, you aren't on all of them at the same time.
Travis, based on your observations, which social platform or platforms are most lucrative for entrepreneurs of color right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd have to say Instagram and TikTok, right? With Instagram, as we all know, we're able to build communities about the things that resonate with us. We're able to build brands. We're able to create content that can really deeply affect our people, affect our communities, affect different audiences. And it's important that whenever we have this mindset that we want to build a brand, that we're finding what's true to us. We're finding that authenticity platform, that authenticity focus of whatever we're creating, to be able to put it out there in a natural way. And you'll see that organically people will start to follow you, people will start to support you, people start to subscribe to your content, your newsletters. And then you want to create those verticals of how you reach and connect to them. And all that is important to really build an effective brand and ecosystem around the brand, which then creates different ways for you to monetize.
Mm. And speaking of brand ecosystems, Alex, you talk a lot about social media and how it's really changed consumer behavior. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think with the rise of social media being one of the primary uses of our day, spending hours on it, a lot of our buying behavior has shifted, and a lot of products tend to thrive in environments where people want to share the content or want to share what they've bought on their feeds. And so oftentimes people don't think about the fact that when you're on social media, when you are on Instagram or Twitter and you talk about any experience, whether it be a dining experience or whether it be an experience you had with a cleaning product, you are contributing to the reputation and the marketing of said brand. So keep that in mind as far as what that means for your brand and what that means for motivating and inspiring people to want to share what they have to say about your brand on social.
Um, Speaking of that, I know Alex, when you were 21, 22 years old, you built Boss Babe, which is a subscription based online community that was marketed to millennial women. At the time, Boss Babe really spoke to me. The brand definitely resonated. I want to talk a little bit about that because do you feel that when it comes to building a community, when it comes to building an audience, what tools and strategies would you actually advise other entrepreneurs looking to build a community like you did, which was very successful?
Thank you. So I definitely think that the important part is to emphasize on intangible value. And what that means is that right now our economy has become so sophisticated that most people are making consumer decisions based on things that they want more than what they need. Right. So most of our needs are being met and we can afford most of the basic human needs as far as food, shelter, and stuff like that. So when it comes to the conspicuous budget, when it comes to the disposable income, people are spending that and putting that in places they are finding intangible value. So that is more connected not to tangible results, but to the emotions, the psychology, to the invisible part and connection that people have with a product or a brand. So to give you an example, one of my favorites is the Jordan brand. So the reason why the Jordan brand is so successful to this day, Jordan has been retired for years now, but he can still sell sneakers for the same sneaker for 30 years and it'll get sold out over and over again. How does that happen? If people want to buy shoes, they don't necessarily say, I want to buy the cheapest, easiest shoe to get. They want to buy the shoe that represents their identity, their expression, in their style. So, what gives the Jordan shoe so much weight is that it's associated with the games that were played while he was wearing them. So, there's this historic piece. And as we know, sports is a very emotional experience. It bonds us to our relatives, to our friends. And so, that is the intangible value that makes the sneaker worth 200, 300, sometimes $1,000, depending how into it you are about this stuff. And that is what differentiates brands today. And so instead of just focusing on the tangible value that your product or service can provide, when it comes to building a community, you want to cultivate that intangible value, whether it be through sports, whether it be through with Boss Babe in my first company, the way that we connected people was just this desire and ambition to be successful as a young woman. And that's what makes it so that when we put our logo on a t-shirt, we can charge it at a profit that represents the symbolic value to our customers and is really worth it to them.
Travis, so Alex brought up a lot of great points
Whew, that
about,
was amazing.
yeah, no, that was really good. You dropped a lot of gems
Thank
Yep.
you.
about brand identity, the psychology behind brands. And I know that with driven society, like, you definitely have your finger on the cusp when it comes to connecting big brands with influencers and those who have like a lot of cultural currency. So I want to ask you, based on that and your observation, what brands would you say are doing a really good job when it comes to building online community that maybe other entrepreneurs and creatives should look at and sort of take note?
Mm, good question. And I just even add what Alex was saying was so spectacular because the psychology, right? It's about the brands that can tap into the psychology to build that type of following. So going to like sneaker brands from Nike, right? What Nike is doing as far as how they built this cult following to just follow them throughout the years and knowing exactly who to tap to, who to create lifetime partnerships, like the lifetime partnership they did with LeBron James, which is should be um, easy. It should be an easy thing to know, of course, to do it with LeBron James, but not many brands have stepped up to make those type of business calls and those type of business partnerships. So Nike on the sneaker side and street and fashion side is definitely one of them. A lot of high end brands do that well. They understand the power of luxury. They understand the power of creating an illusion or creating a space that makes people want to aspire to. And then you have your community brands too, right? Like I love our local community brands from you see from Effel's Club to CCNY to how they understand how to connect with their audience. They understand how to really tap into what creative needs, what creatives are looking for, how creatives want to evolve. So any brand around the space that actually understands who their audience is, understands what type of content they want to feed them to add value to them, understands what's passionate to the people who are following them and tapping into that psyche, they get my vote. I just love that natural, organic space. And you can always tell by who they have in their boardroom and who they have advocating for their brand and their message.
And speaking of these brands that are doing so well, building communities, have a strong identity, um, when it comes to what they're putting into place, Alex, what would you suggest that needs to be done? What tools, what strategies do entrepreneurs need in order to sort of replicate that formula for success and build a niche audience and create content that resonates with people?
Yeah, I think you have to figure out, how does your audience want to be seen? How do they want to be perceived? And how can you make that easier for them through whatever you're selling? Again, social media has made a lot of our social lives be about perception. Social media is about how to control the perception of who you are, and that is what brands are as well. It's how do you control the perception of the quality and the integrity for what you stand for, or lack, right? So I think it's just getting really clear on, who does my audience want to be? What are they missing emotionally? What are they missing psychologically? Most of the time, it's going to be some type of affiliation with either, like Trav was saying, a luxury brand, or a brand like that expresses their desire for whatever their interests are. Like, the spectrum is very broad. And so just get really clear on, like, how can I make it easier for my customer to express themselves and feel like they are making the right decision by buying from us, by being associated from us. And the clearer you are on that, the easier all of your lives will be.
But when it comes to like really figuring that out, Travis, is what do you do? Like, are there any tools? Are there any resources? Or do you really need to be creating sort of like these like studies or focus groups to figure that part out?
Well, that's a great question. I truly believe that when you're really connecting with your audience, the truth has to come from you. I think for the most successful brands, they understood exactly what they wanted to represent. They understood exactly the voice that they wanted to show up as. And naturally, those people in that niche, in that market, in that landscape found that brand and were able to say, ooh, I identified that, right? Like, and that's the type of brand you want to build. You want to build a brand that has inbound marketing, right? So every brand, every influencer or whatnot, you should, and you want to build this audience, you should have a constitution for your brand, in a sense, meaning that you should have the principles of what you stand for, the values of what you stand for. And then once you have the values, you'll know exactly the exactly type of content you want to create from those values and how you want people to connect with that, right? Once you know those values, you know what your audience cares about. You can tap into that, and then you have a lifetime consumer, you have a lifetime just fan and advocate for you, right? Like Alex's community, they advocate, they go hard for her, right? Because she understands exactly what she puts out into the world, and she creates that. You know what I mean? She obviously she's inspired, but it comes from her unique identity and her perspective. So just like everything else in life, it'll connect and it'll flow to you once you put it out there from a truthful center.
Alex,
Yeah,
did you want
I
to add?
wanted to add, yeah, I think keeping your ears to the streets, like, that's what it's about. I think we want to wish there's some magic strategy or data or, tool that we can just click a button and see, these types of things, but this is qualitative research. This is I
Mm-hmm.
think that with the switch of social media, a lot of people think marketing is about data and numbers and analytics. But if you look at the greats of marketing and advertising, they were very intuitive people. They were people who were sensitive to trends, sensitive to early adopters. And if you don't have that touch, then what I will suggest is to hire someone who has that touch. Talk to your kids if you have to. But the
Yep.
point is that there's no button. There's just keeping your ears to the streets, being sensitive to the trends that are accumulating, and making moves based off of that.
There you go. And another thing, Alex, when it comes to creating this content that resonates, you speak a lot about metrics versus meaning, right? Which should dictate the content someone creates and when and how to post it? Or should creatives be finding a healthy balance between the two?
Yes, that's a great question. It really depends on what your goals are. So if you're trying a direct to consumer business model, then accumulating vanity metrics, which are things like likes and followers, are not as important, because that you're selling directly to the consumer. And what you want to look for is what I call effort metrics. So I basically categorize metrics based on if they're done out of impulse or out of effort. a lot of social media is designed to sell advertisements, which means that they're designed to get you to look, they're designed to get you to have an impulse reaction. And so a lot of the metrics are measuring impulse reactions, and that's how they make their money. But I often try to tell people that's not necessarily how you make your money. If you're trying to sell directly to consumer, you want to see that they are putting in effort, which is expressed through long comments, which is expressed through shares, people sharing the content with people that they trust, and getting you into the door of people who it would be way harder. Basically, they're helping you turn a cold lead warm by sharing your content. And another metric I use is just like copying people, copying your style. With my first brand, I learned that, it's actually a really good sign, because it means that people are resonating with enough to try to duplicate it. So that's very important. If you are working with brands, then it's a little different, because brands do care about vanity metrics. They are looking for those impulse metrics. They are looking for that exposure. So if that's the case, then yeah, you want to amp that up. You have to, if you're on Instagram, you want to focus on visuals. You want to get your visual storytelling up. You want to get the way you package yourself, and basically you want to create a consistent mood. And again, figure out what that mood is. And if you can create a repeated impression of that mood at least 3 times to everyone in your audience, then a pattern will be established. Once a pattern is established in our brains, that's how trust happens, right? Just think about your relationship, think about your friendships, think about the relationships that didn't work. It's because a pattern was not consistent. And us as humans, when a pattern is not consistent, we see that as a threat. We want to go, especially when it comes to how we spend our money and where we spend it. So it's up to you to keep that consistent pattern, create that consistent mood.
Mm.
Yes, indeed.
Travis, a number of brands are tapping into the power and the influence that Black creatives like yourself have, right? They're
Yep.
tapping into that cultural currency. We hear things like slogans like, we are the culture, we move the culture forward. Brands know that. I think they've always known that, but they're more transparent on how they're using that power now. How
Yep.
can content creators and influencers and business owners and those who aspire capitalize from the power that we actually possess?
Yeah, great question. And I think it all comes down to learning to first, it's a mental thing, I'd say, right? Because brands come to my company and myself to find out who are these authentic creators, right? Who are these creators? Who are these Black creators that we can work with to be able to sell our messaging, our products, our content, etc. So it's number one thing is a mental thing, right? From working with creators and influencers, is like believing that nothing moves without us as a culture, right? And believing that you have the power, believing that your art, your identity, what you're putting out into the world is a real thing, that it is something that can be treated like a business, and that brands will pay a lot of money to be a part of you, to be associated with you. And so you could feel that level of credibility and feel powerful around that brand, so that around yourself. So that's one thing, is believing in your identity, believing that you are worth everything that you believe you're worth, believing that you have that value. So that's the one thing on the influencer side as far as mental. The other thing now is just the business side of things, right? Is I think we touched on it throughout this whole conversation, is building these ecosystems across our brand, from social media to managing our websites, to managing our overall digital presence, to creating newsletter verticals, creating content verticals, just creating the ecosystem where that all exude your identity, exude what the brand is about. Then you have to find out the brands that you do want to work with, and then that's where I feel like a lot of influencers miss the boat. Black influencers is like, it takes a high level of strategy, right? Like if you want to work with a certain brand, you have to be able to know exactly who is the person that's making decisions, number one, and number two, what type of content, what are you putting out there to attract that type of brand, and how can you be strategic of getting in front of that brand, right? And then at that point, it's about knowing your value, having a great negotiation skill set to know you put your price on your worth, and then you be able to create a partnership, right? And you always want to go for it to be a partnership rather than a one-off situation. That's another thing I see Black creators kind of get in the habit of, doing a one-off posting or a one-off ad or whatnot. Figure out how can you create a partnership. Figure out how can you develop your own platform that instead of the brand just, paying you or having you involved with a campaign, how can you create a platform that you then send to the brand in a deck to be able to have that brand partner on this platform? And maybe it's an event series or a content series, and you're doing it multiple times in the next 6 months, or you're doing it quarterly, or you're doing it once annually or whatnot. How can you get that brand out to buy into your vision, buy into your platform, buy into your passion, and have a long-term relationship with that brand? And that's how you maximize your value. That's how you maximize the amount of value you're able to pull from a brand as well too.
Mm. Thank you for breaking that down, Travis. And, speaking of partnering with brands, Alex, you've partnered with a number of major brands, including brands like Dropbox. Can you talk about what your strategy was when it comes to these partnerships? What type of mindset are you going into these deals? Are you looking for something long term? And how do you secure those deals?
Yeah, so Travis and I actually work together on a lot of these deals. So we have a very similar philosophy, and it's just about being very clear about we see ourselves as a production studio. We are a production studio. We say, hey, we can give you this deliverable. We don't look at it as posts and little, like he said, one-off postings. We're a media company. So we can say, hey, we can conceptualize a concept that fits with your brand and my brand at the same time and engages our audience. We can also produce that content. So we can create that visual storytelling through video or photography. We also do audio production, and we also distribute the content directly to our engaged audience of thousands, tens of thousands of multicultural millennials who want to hear about these things through a trusted voice. So like my audience has been following me for years, so they trust our platform to find their tech news, the culture news, the business news, and products. So I think that when you are trying to work with brands, you want to be very clear about what deliverables you can provide. If you are in the influencer game, I always tell, my audience who are content creators, you're not just a content creator, you are a producer. You're not just an influencer, you're a marketer, because the one asset that you have that these brands are giving you the money for is trust. Right? Trust is very important when it comes to successful transactions. It's important for these brands who are trying to warm this audience up and don't necessarily have that ability and are doing business with you to create that. So the clearer you can be about how you can warm up the audience, and the more confident you can be about the real role and dynamic and power that you have in this whole transaction, I think the easier it is to pitch and succeed in actually getting deals.
Speaking of influencer marketing, I want to throw it back to you, Travis, because you've been in influencer marketing for a few years now yourself. What shifts have you observed? Like, how has it evolved? And then how do you think influencer marketing has also been affected by the COVID pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah, great question. It's definitely been a lot of shifts. We find that a lot of the influencers obviously have changing platforms, right? Twitter was extremely prevalent. Instagram took that energy. Twitter is still prevalent, but now you have TikTok, right? Now it's really about the type of content you can make and how can you infuse that with music? How can you infuse that with art? So that's definitely one shift. Is just a shift in platforms from Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, and it continue to evolve. Right now, you have Clubhouse, which would be a whole nother platform that is gonna have take over or have its own presence. I was just talking on the phone with somebody the other day, and they're like, "I'm getting the most. This is the new thing, and it's just an audio only format, right?" So the shift in platforms has been a really big shift in the influencer community. Also, in the last couple of years, has been a birth of like really prevalent and mobily upward communities, right? Communities that have been starting from localized movements, right? From it could be a creative focused community, it can be a women-based empowerment community, it can be a Black men social community. You have like the Gentlemen's Club. Gentleman's Factory out in Brooklyn, and you have just different pockets of communities now that represent a whole entire of collective influence. So not only just you getting just one influencer, but you're getting a collective mindset. And that is also how influencers have shifted. And that can go from brands to clothing brands to product brands. Products have become influencers. It's just now, it's definitely a shifted the landscape. And as far as the Black Lives Matter movement, that is the beautiful thing about social media is that you can find your tribe. You can find the people who you can just connect with to fight all of these things we have to go through, from social injustice to police brutality. And what that did for me, for the Black Lives Matter movement, is just connect us all in a way where we have an open source to find the information we need to keep the movement going, to make sure we're making strides in the movement, and to make sure we're protecting and observing our community.
Mm. And to sort of round out this conversation, Alex, I want to ask you, what's the future of influencer marketing? Travis did a great job talking about the evolution of it and touching on the future. And I know that you two have been, you speak a lot about future trends, and you've had a very futuristic mindset. So what's the future of influencer marketing?
I think the future is going to be a acknowledgement of one-man media companies. So as I said, I think even the term influencer will start to become antiquated, because right now we see the influencer as this sort of tag-along partner for brands. And the reality is that depending on the level of influence you have, you are the media company that is replacing what BET would do or what MTV would do in like the 90s or even 80s, because you can have the same reach. I mean, there's plenty of influencers right now who have a larger reach than some of the top media companies in the world, and that's just because the way social media has disrupted the market. All it takes to have a media company is an audience and a point of view, and I have videos about this on my YouTube. But I think the future, will just be like, hey, we get this source from here. I mean, if you can even look at the nature of our politics right now, Donald Trump is using Twitter as his media distribution outlet. And so I think that these are going to bring up all types of like ethical questions and ideas about how do we want to move forward in a society where, a person can be that media company. And I think brands, they already, I think, know how much they're sort of have to cooperate around influencers now, but I think that's just going to continue to grow from here on out.
So it's not so
To
much.
add on to that.
No, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead, Travis.
No, I was just saying, to add on to that, to Alex's point, and also we have the tools now, right, to be that one-man media company. It wasn't always like that. Like if you look at Alex's content or any of these top influencer content, it's like really high quality, crispy, really clear, very high level content they can create, high level verticals based off productions that they can do. So, and that's comparable to like some of these really bigger media companies. So we have all the tools. We have the photography, the production. We have all the tools to create what we want in-house right now. And for one influencer, one authentic content creator can do all of that with in-house. And that's what really changed the shift the game. And that's only going to evolve in the next few years, in the next decade.
So we actually have to wrap up this conversation, but there's so much more to discuss. Before we end, I want to give our viewers a chance to connect with you guys, because you guys have a lot to share. You're doing a great job, and there's so much more information I think that they can get out of you. So please let us know how we can, get in touch with you and also access the information you're putting out.
Yeah, so I actually have an authentic content roadmap that people can download. It's for free, and you can get it at bit.ly/authentic roadmap. And it kind of walks you through the steps of how to make content around your brand. And if you want to say hi or ask me any questions, you can follow me on Instagram at Alex Wolf, and you'll see there I have links to my podcast and other videos and resources about this information.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, you can check out drivensociety.com. You can check us out on Instagram and all social media platforms as well. If you want to connect with me personally and ask me questions about if you're building a brand or how to, create those type of partnerships, or if you want to just inquire about services of how we can create something amazing, experiential, and creative for your brand, you can reach out to me at Trav_Weeks on Instagram. And yeah, you can hit me up. I'm happy to, meet new people and definitely provide the information I can.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.